Let's meet the first part of the Drukhari army. I'm gonna show you each of the covens or patrols, I guess, as I get them set up on the battlefield and talk you through them a little bit. So this first patrol is a Dark Technomancer patrol, also using the Obsessive Collector trait, because you use 2 of those for a custom coven. And you'll see on the left we have 3 raiders. In the middle there's a squad of racks. Right down here in the very front, we have an old school metal homunculus leading this up. This homunculus has the Helm of Spite, which I find appropriate given that the head is painted all white. I don't know why that seems appropriate to me, but it does. The squad of scourges here in the back, all of them have the Haywire Blaster. Might not have the correct model for that, but these are some old metal models and I just really like the way they look, so I'm leaving them with the old guns they have. And then again, we have technically a Ravager, but we took off the 2 extra gunners, so this is now a Reaper. And with the Dark Technomancer Coven, you can choose to overcharge a weapon when you fire it. And what it does is it does +1 to wound and it does +1 damage. So even a relatively normal, I guess you could say, gun can do a little bit more work in the Dark Technomancers, but when you also add in, all 3 of the Raiders have disintegrator cannons. So disintegrator cannons are 3 shots. They become strength, well, essentially they're strength 5, but they have a +1 to wound. So it's like having a strength 6 gun, and instead of doing 2 damage for everyone that goes through, it does 3. A little bit more reliable for killing Space Marines. And the same with the Haywire. It's really good for knocking out vehicles because it adds the +1 to damage, and the +1 to wound means that you're if you're shooting at a vehicle, you're going to get the mortal wounds off on a 3-up, and your D3 mortal wounds go off on a 5-up with the Dark Technomancers. So I like to use the Scourges for that and run them all with the Haywire Blaster so they can just do a little bit more work. Come back with the next patrol in just a second. All right, welcome back to patrol number 2. This patrol, as you probably can guess just from seeing the units, is going to be Prophets of Flesh. We do have 1 squad of racks just to get our troops in there. These are some converted racks, some conversions that I did using bits, arms, weapons, and other pointy thingies. Just kind of converted some Kabalite warriors or witches. So they might not be perfect, but they get the job done. You got the homunculus leading this. You've got a unit of 4 grotesques. They are pretty obnoxious actually when you start having to deal with them. And then I have 2 Talos, both of the Haywire Blasters, and they're both using the macro scalpels. So they might not have the sheer number of attacks you get with a chain flail, but the damage output is pretty decent against most things. Then with the Prophets of Flesh, you have the 4-up invulnerable save on everyone in the unit, which makes them pretty durable. Keep the homunculus nearby. Oh, this guy has the Vexator mask, this homunculus, and he also has the Warlord trait, Diabolical Soothsayer, so we get D3 command points at the beginning of the game, as well as the Vexator mask being able to shut off combat for the opposition for 1 unit, or not shut it off, but even if you get charged, you can tell that unit that they have to fight last. So that's a good one to have, especially these days when there's a lot of melee-oriented armies. So you keep him up there, give everybody an extra toughness for his aura, and make your opponent fight last in most cases. So it's pretty useful, pretty nice. It's a small patrol, but it's probably one of the harder ones to chew through at the same time. And for our 3rd and final patrol, we have the Kabalite patrol, the Cabal of the Black Heart. So we are having this patrol led by the Archon. He has the Jinn Blade and Labyrinthine Cunning as his Warlord trait, so we'll be rerolling 1s to hit, and he'll gain a CP on the roll of a 6-up anytime 1 is spent by either himself or by his opponent, so long as he's on the board. You've got the nice Kabalite warrior troop here, or squad. You got 1 with a blaster, and the Sybarite has the blast pistol. We have 2 Ravagers and a Venom. The 2 Ravagers both have triple disintegrator cannons. That is kind of a nasty little mix for taking out troops. And then you have Drazar, the Master of Blades. He's just kind of bananas when you get him into combat, pretty amazing. And a squad of 5 Incubi to go with him. And that is our 3rd and final patrol. Again, I don't think I mentioned it actually, with the Drukhari, you have a rule called the raiding party, which lets you take 3 patrols and you get 4 CP refunded to you. So you're not having to spend 4 CP to have all of those. However, with this list, I have spent 4 of the 12 CP that you start with for a 2,000 point game just to have a relic for all 3 of my HQs, 1 in each coven, and then, or patrol. And then you do spend, let me see, that was 4. You do spend also an additional one. Oh goodness, I can't remember what it's for. I'll remember what it's for in a little while, and I'll try to remind you all of what that is. But I am starting the game with 8 command points for this Drukhari force. And we'll come back in just a moment with the Grey Knights. All right, now we're back with the Grey Knights army. Just running a single battalion for this battle report. This comes in, I believe, at 1,993 points. So there's some wiggle room. There's some things to experiment with. I had been running a list using 3 Grandmaster Dread Knights. That's the big model in the back. But they were giving up a lot of character killing points and a lot of there's a lot of secondaries you can take that kind of hurt with that. And so I've decided to test out a list that's running fewer of the Dread Knights, still about the same number of characters. And it seems to be pretty useful. It's also got enough bodies to screen a little bit. So let me go through this real quick. Going from left to right. On the left side, we've got 6-man squad of Strike Marines. We have 2 Staves, 2 Falchions, and 2 Halberds in that squad. Behind them, we have 2 5-man units of Terminators. The squad on the left is all running Halberds and a Psy Cannon. The squad on the right is all Falchions, 1 Stave, and 1 Halberd. Then we have 2 5-man units of Paladins. This unit has 3 Falchions in it, 2 Silencers, and a Halberd. Testing this using 2 groups of Paladins instead of 1 big 10-man blob, just to see how it goes. It worked pretty well in a game I played recently, and I wanted to try it out again without the combat squatting, just as an actual list write-up. I've got Drago on the left, the Grandmaster himself. You've got the Apothecary with a hammer in the middle, and good old Grandmaster Voldus on the right-hand side. And then we have our 2nd unit of Paladins. This unit has 2 Staves, 2 Silencers, Halberds, and the Paragon, the guy with a hammer. He's the leader of this unit. Behind them, we have our first special unit. This is a heavy weapons unit called the Purgation Squad. 3 Silencers, 1 Psy Cannon, and a sword. Got good old Grandmaster and Dread Knight armor behind them. He has the Silencer, the Psy Cannon. He is equipped with the Dread Knight teleporter. He's also the Warlord for this battle, and he has first to the fray for his Warlord trait, so you reroll failed charge rolls if you're within 6 inches of him. Pretty tasty. And then the last unit in this list is a 5-man Interceptor squad. Got a variety of weapons in there and a Silencer. And I do really like the Silencers right now with tides that you can pick for the Grey Knights. If you give them the +1 for Psy weapons, +1 strength and +1 damage, the Silencers can do a lot of work. Even if there's not any AP with it, just the number of shots tends to get some through, and they can take down some pretty big things. So this is the Grey Knights, almost 2,000 point list. We'll have to play around with some options, and I have just collected a couple of new models that I would like to get painted up and probably swap some stuff out and put those in. So we'll see how this goes. This will be the first time to play this particular list against the Drukhari. So I'm very interested to see how it plays out. So we will be back soon. Better look at the board, look at the deployment zones. We'll do the roll off, also go for secondaries, and we'll cover all of those things next. All right, kitchen table wargamers, here we go. The map, battlefield, land, territory, whatever you want to call this, has been set. You can see down here, we rolled for the mission. We got priority target. It's mission number 33. Objective markers are placed, and then the 4 outside ones or the corner ones get moved, alternating turns based on who did not pick the deployment zone. So the red die mark out the Grey Knight deployment zone. Grey Knights chose that objective marker to be their priority marker. The Drukhari moved the marker that was in this far corner back behind that building, so that is now their priority objective marker. The central one cannot be touched. Drukhari were sneaky and pulled this one forward, so it's just outside of the Grey Knights deployment zone, or it's right on the edge, so it's still holdable at the beginning of the game, but it'll be a little bit more dicey. This one, the Grey Knights said, we can match you that, and they pulled this one around the corner, so it's, I don't know, might be easier to get at, definitely going to be able to shoot at. And then there's the Drukhari priority objective marker in the back corner behind that rock. As far as the terrain is concerned, the pieces and the battle mat that you see has been lent to me by a Hostile Galaxy. That is a digital Warhammer magazine that will be coming out soon, and you'll see some of the written battle reports that I'll do in that production. So be looking forward to that. I'll let you know once I have a date for when they're gonna go live. So we have really cool desert scenario. We've got some big pieces of terrain. There's one of these in each deployment zone. They will be obscuring unless you have models that have line of sight, and then it will be considered dense cover, which means that it's a -1 to hit when you're shooting through that. And you've got 2 fairly large pieces on each end of the table that count as obscuring, clearly. There's no holes or windows in those. All of these smaller pieces are going to be played as obstacles. Infantry can receive the benefit of cover if they're within 1 inch of a barricade or an obstacle like this. And it is a -2 to go over the top of these, so it's better to go around them in most cases. And I think that's about it. So this is the map. This is the world. Obviously, this is a Dark Eldar desert. And the Grey Knights were called down to investigate because of this strange little happening in the middle. There was a suspicion that there might have been some sort of chaos trickery going on. And the Grey Knights have arrived. The Drukhari were not impressed, so they have answered in kind. So we are about to begin. We'll do the deployment, come back and show you how everybody's set up on the table, what's in reserves, what's not, and then we'll have the roll-off to see who takes the first turn. The forces have been deployed. The map is set. It is about time to do the important roll-off to see who is going to go first. The Drukhari have deployed in as sneaky of a fashion as they can. They have the 2 Ravagers back here with the Archon for the rerolls of 1, holding their own priority objective marker. We've got a nasty little coven of Prophets of Flesh up here in the front there, looking to get on that middle objective and then control the center of the board as quickly as they can. And directly across from them, we have a Terminator squad supported with an Apothecary, holding down this objective and also having range on the center of the board. So if things get a little hairy a little fast, they have some options. This Venom has been loaded up with a 5-man Cabalite squad. There's a blaster and a blast pistol in there, and 5 guys with splinter rifles. This Raider has a 5-man squad of Racks. The Far Raider also has a 5-man squad of Racks, as well as the Homunculus with the Helm of Spite. So he will have to get out to be able to deny things, but for now, it's a little safer to start him off inside the transport. As far as the Grey Knights are concerned, we have set up, also making kind of a line, not quite as thick as the Drukhari because we don't have as many bodies. We have the Interceptor squad. They, of course, can move 12. They also can shunt once per game for free and then do it once later for ACP. So they might just be there to hold the line and stretch it out. Whereas this Terminator squad here is most definitely within 5 inches of that objective, which is their priority marker. So they're clearly planning to go and hold that down. It'd be hard to shift them off. We already saw this Terminator squad with a Apothecary And then back here, the 2 5-man paladin units are surrounding Voldus. So the most likely approach here is that there's going to be some buffs happening and then some teleporting, and then we are going to have paladin death spread out all over the board. It's going to be very interesting. A lot of firepower from the Drukhari, a lot of speed. They can move around, they can threaten things, they can hold things down with all their vehicles. So it'll be a challenge. And then in Deep Strike, what you don't see on the table, the Drukhari have their Scourge in reserve. They get to come in at any point just for the fun of it because they have wings. There's also one Raider in reserve that is full of Drazar, the Master of Blades, and some Incubi. For the Grey Knights, the Purgation Squad, the 6-man Strike Squad, the Grand Master in Dread Knight armor, and the Supreme Commander, Mr. Kaldor Drago, are all in Deep Strike, waiting to come down upon this battlefield wherever they're needed the most. It also costs a CP for the Raider to be put in Deep Strike, and it costs 1 CP for the Purgation Squad to be put in Deep Strike. So armies will be starting off with 1 less CP, and that's, I think, all that we need to discuss before the important roll-off to see who goes first. All right, we're going to use this empty space right here for the roll-off. The white die would be for the Grey Knights, the purple die for the Drukhari. Well, let's see what happens. The Grey Knights have the upper hand, and Grey Knights are going to choose to go first. That way they can get their buffs off and start moving into position to control the board a little bit better. We will come back after movement and psychic phase of the Grey Knights, turn 1. Okay, we're back after the movement phase. This squad of Terminators rolled a mighty 1 on their advance roll, making it to pretty much be within cover. They committed a boo-boo, I just realized, because they advanced, so they don't get to shoot. So we're going to undo this casting of Astral Aim and a Mental Focus, so they'll have that command point back, because they can't shoot after they advance. Silly, silly me. Then over on this side, a lot of stuff happened over here. We had an extra blob of Terminators, Paladins as they were. They had moved forward to be within 12 inches of the Terminator squad that has Gate of Infinity. So Gate of Infinity was cast from those Terminators onto this Paladin squad that was here. But that did not happen before Voldus and the Terminators put a lot of buffs on this squad. So they have Armored Resilience, it's a -1 to wound. They have Ethereal Manipulation, rerolling all failed hits when they're within half range of their target. Hammerhand is a +1 to wound in combat. Sanctuary gives them a +1 to their invulnerable save, so they are now a unit with 2 up armor and 4 up invulnerable saves. And we spent a CP for Empiric Surge. This is a newer stratagem for them, but it gives everybody within 6 inches of them a +1 to cast. So all the spells were cast successfully, no rerolls needed, no perils happened this time around, which is nice. After they jumped, they landed near the Interceptor squad, which had moved already to the center with their 1 per game teleport shunt. They landed within 12 inches of the Grotesques, making sure that was the closest unit. And then with both the Empiric Surge and Psychic Channeling, which allows them to roll 3 dice instead of 2, they successfully cast the Vortex of Doom, which hit the Grotesque squad. The closest model was this guy on the far right, and he took 3 wounds because it does D3 damage on the target and any unit within 3 inches of that same target. So the Talos is actually a squad of 2. Went ahead and allocated the wounds to the guy on the left. He took 3 and did not shrug any. Grotesques took 3 wounds, did not shrug any of them. And the Homunculus took 2 wounds, and he also did not shrug a single one from Power from Pain. So that was a pretty effective and efficient vortex that was cast. And this is also giving the Grey Knights some pretty good board control. You got the center sort of locked down. At least that 1 unit is buffed. They have every intention of making a charge this turn and hopefully keeping the Drukhari back in their own corner. Well, not counting all of the vehicles that can fly around them, but at least the scary squad of the Prophets of Flesh. All right, the shooting phase is done. The Grey Knights only had these two units here, the Interceptor Squad and Paladins, who were in range to shoot anything. Paladins did their shooting first because of their landing after Gate of Infinity. They were within half range of that venom. It was behind the rock. They cleaned out the venom and it exploded on itself, so it imploded, and the 5 dudes that were inside rolled to get out, and 3 of them died. It was amazing. One of the worst I've ever seen. So 3 Capellite warriors broke their legs getting out of the venom and died in the fire. It was a shame. The rest of the shooting from the Paladins did nothing to the Grotesques, even after spending some CP to boost that to a stronger strength with the Cybold ammunition, so that was very disappointing. Then the Interceptor Squad shot their silencer into those 2 Capellite warriors, did nothing. Actually, one went through and then he saved it on a 5. And then the Stormbolters all went into the Grotesques and took 2 wounds, and they did not save either of them or ignore them with power from pain. So we killed 1 Grotesque and wounded another one. So, all things considered, gained 2 points from Bring It Down and killed a Grotesque off, so it's not a horrible shooting phase. But then the poor Paladins rolled a 3 on their charge, spent a CP to re-roll that, and rolled a 3 on the charge. Tisk, tisk, tisk. And we are back. The Drukhari have finished the movement turn. We did roll for the morale test for the 2 Capellite warriors. They rolled a 1, so they passed automatically. Bravo them. As you can see, everything here in the front, the Prophets of Flesh, is all moved up very close to the Paladins. We'll be doing some charging, I would imagine, and some shooting to get rid of the Interceptors, try to claim that objective in the center. This raider back here with a homunculus and a squad of racks has moved up. They have line of sight on the middle group of Interceptors and Paladins, as well as the Paladin squad in the back, and also the Terminators that are up there holding an objective in the deployment zone. So there's a lot of opportunity there to not only hold an objective, but to do some shooting. This Reaper has moved backwards, actually, still in range to shoot all the targets that it would want to shoot at over here, but also dropped back a little bit to provide screening against the deep strike, because the Grey Knights are kind of famous for that. Then the Archon moved forward, the 2 Ravagers moved forward. They're both within the 6-inch bubble of him to reroll 1s to hit, and a little Fire and Fade will be employed, which will allow them one of these 3 vehicles to back up just enough to fill in this back corner, because there is, after measuring, a 9-inch bubble right down here in this corner, which is enough for a couple of smaller units to get in. A Drago model perhaps could drop there and cause all kinds of havoc in the back line. So we will take care of that. And the Drukhari are also going to spend 1 command point for the homunculus to heal D3 wounds on something. Haven't quite decided if it'll be the Talos or the Grotesques. Most likely the Talos, but we'll do that in just a minute, and then we'll come back. And last but not least, this raider, also carrying a 5-man squad of racks, has moved its full movement and landed on top of the mountain here, able to shoot down at those Terminators, or down into this mess in the middle of the table, or across the table, just depending on what the priority target ends up being. So we will come back after the shooting phase is all wrapped up, and we'll see what is left of the Grey Knights. Coming back at you after the shooting phase, these 3 have done their shooting. The farthest one that was out front spent the 1 CP to Fire and Fade and came back here, protecting from the deep strike there in the back corner. Over here, all of our firepower combined with a bunch of small haywire shots and random things killed off the Interceptor squad. And actually the MVP was the 1 rack in that raider back there in the corner that had an ossifactor. Crazy little gun. When it's supercharged, can do some business. So he killed the last 2 Interceptors. He did fail to hit the first time, so we had to spend the CP to reroll that hit, but it was worth it. Killed off the last 2 Interceptors and made it possible for the Talos to charge all the way around to the backside and claim the objective marker there in the center. The Grotesques came in first. We did spend the CP to Overwatch, and everything whiffed except for 1 round out of the silencer, which the Grotesque failed to save. Spent a CP, still failed to save it. Rolled 3 damage, which was all that 1 Grotesque had left on it, and he didn't make any power from pain saves. That goes with the homunculus. So we've whittled down the grotesque to just 2 left. Homunculus still has his 2 wounds, 3 wounds remaining. Oh, and we did spend a CP and healed his Talos all the way up to 1 more wound, so it's at 5. Kind of felt like a waste, but it probably was not. This Raider put all his shots down here, supercharged, and managed to pick up 2 Terminators and all 3 of both of the Ravagers and the Raider managed to kill a Terminator and take a wound off a Terminator from this squad over here, which was kind of disappointing. We did spend a CP to give them redoubtable defense, so they reduced incoming damage by 1. So all the Disintegrators did 1 damage instead of 2, which is the only reason that there's more of them left alive over there. So now we're going to get into the combat phase. We're going to do some swinging, some kicking, clawing, slapping. The Homunculus using the Vexator Mask is making the Paladins fight last in this combat round, so we'll come back when it's all done and let you know who's still standing. Alright, that combat phase went about as expected. The Paladin unit, being fully buffed up, took everything and suffered 2 wounds for it. Then they hit back. They didn't hurt anything except for a Talos. 1 wound got through on a Talos. Everything else was saved on the 4 invulnerable, so this Talos went down to 2 wounds remaining. No power from pains there. And then we had 1 grotesque that got hit with a hammer, and he went down to 1 wound remaining, and also made no power from pain saves. So that's it. That concluded the fight phase. That concludes the turn for the Drukhari. So we'll score this up, take away all these cards, and reset. And you can see that the Paladins did their pile-in move, so that we got a few of them closer to that objective, and the Talos didn't really end up mattering. And kind of strung around with the rest of the combat. So that's how it ends. End of turn 1. We'll find out the score and we'll be back for turn 2. Had to interrupt the movement phase real quick to show what happened here. The Grey Knights have some trickery where we can spend a CP and they can deep strike within 3 inches of an enemy. They're not allowed to charge after doing so, but they can still shoot and psychic. So even with the attempted screening, the Grey Knights came and dropped in right here in the corner. However, because it is a stratagem that you spend a command point for, Mr. Archon over here with his Cabal of the Black Heart went ahead and vected that. The vect was successful, the stratagem does not go off, the Grey Knights did not spend the CP, and those boys do not get to stay there. So they're going to have to find another landing spot. Interesting. And the movement phase is done for the Grey Knights. As you can see, the warp particles have settled, the teleportarium has been finished, and we have a squad of purgators here in this back corner, ready to make life pretty miserable for the Drukhari. They have a Raider in their sights, they have a Reaper in their sights, there's 2 Ravagers over there, and you got the Grand Master as well as Kaldor Drago, who has stepped out of the warp to come and join the battle. As I mentioned just a moment ago, the Vect was successful, so this strike squad that was coming down in that back corner to cause trouble and be a nuisance didn't get to land there after all. And after further consideration, they just stayed back in the teleportarium. They kind of came in, fizzled in and out of existence, and then went back to their ship. So they will have to be coming down turn 3, which might actually be better, who knows. We'll go ahead and get into the psychic phase, and we'll come back after the psychic and shooting is all done. Okay, the end of the shooting phase, we had a little bit of damage spread out from this back squad over here. We took this Raider down to 3 wounds remaining with the combination splitting fire from Purgation Squad, from Drago, Dread Knight. We also managed to take this down to 3 wounds remaining and this down to 4 wounds remaining. So the Reaper and Ravager back here are in trouble. We also, if you hadn't noticed, this was the deep strike I mentioned earlier, but this was a move caused from Gate of Infinity. So they're all within range of charging into the Talos. He lets them reroll failed charges. Drago's here to reroll a failed charge. He's going to go into that Raider. Purgation Squad, probably going to sit still because they just like to be there and shoot things. The Grand Master, after he's helped everybody else to reroll charges, is coming in at this here Reaper to try to take them out, and then that will allow him to be in this backfield area, wreaking havoc on the other boats back here, and that could be a big bad problem. Then we'll have the combat going on in the middle, and hopefully these here paladins will make their charge. The only buffs that we got off were ethereal manipulation, so the psychic phase was pretty weak. Failed a whole bunch of things, no hammerhand, no sanctuary. We did not earn a new CP with Imperium domination. We were able to cast 2 smites, and we were able to cast astral aim. That was it. The rest of the psychic phase for the Grey Knights was a bust. Oh, and that one, the raider up there on top of the rock, took a lot of firepower from the Terminators and dropped it down to 1 wound, but it is not dead yet. And nobody's making a charge up the mountain to attack it. So it's kind of just sitting there with its load inside, and it's happy where it's at, causing trouble in the backfield, waiting for some reinforcements. And we're gonna go ahead and roll up some charges here. So this Paladin squad first, going into the Talos that are in combat. They need a 9. That would be a 7. Getting the reroll because of first to the fray. And they rerolled into a 5. So once again, Paladins failing a charge. They don't want to go. Drago looking to get into this raider. He also needs a 9. He rolled, oh, it's just a 7. So he needs to be able to do this because he's the leader. He needs to show these boys how to run. That is a 5. Boo! So he's not making a charge either. Nobody wants to charge. It's kind of embarrassing for the Grey Knights right now. You might want to cover your eyes. All right, Mr. Grandmaster in Nemesis Dread Knight armor, charging the Reaper. I would like all of these to have gone off. This one I feel is a bit more crucial. Well, a 1 is not going to help, and a 3, so it's just a 4. He's going to re-roll it, and he rolls an 11. The first Grey Knight of the game to make a charge is the Grandmaster, the Warlord himself. He's going to stomp on over here, crush a Reaper, and then we will come back after the fight phase is over. Well, this particular combat went exactly as expected. Dread Knight came over, stomped on a Reaper. The Reaper did not explode, so that was good for the Dread Knight. He consolidated his 3 inches, so he is now within this table quarter, which gives the Grey Knights 3 points for being engaged on all fronts. This combat was interesting. We lost 2 Paladins actually, and the Grotesques lost another of their number. Homunculus took a wound, and one of the remaining 3 Paladins is actually down to 1 wound. So there was a lot of damage dealt back and forth, except against the Talos. Nothing happened to them. So that is the end of Grey Knights turn 1. We'll do the scoring, and then we will come back with the Drukhari after their movement phase so you can see where they've ended up, where their deep striking units have gone, and kind of get an idea for what they are about to do. Going to begin a summary here of the Drukhari movement phase. On this edge of the board where the Purgation Squad and Drago dropped in, the Rax and Homunculus jumped out of the Raider, holding the objective marker, which I'll point out, kitchen table wargaming. Yes, sir, we just got those printed out just yesterday. Put them together and showing them off for the first time. The Raider moved up to get in the way, basically, between Lord Kaldor Drago and the Rax, so they can help kind of protect the troops that are left there. There is no line of sight between these guys and that Paladin squad on the other side of the rock, at least not for now. Paladins could move around in the next turn, but for now they're safe. Back here in this corner, we have Grandmaster Voldis, Terminators, and Apothecary, and Mr. Drazar and his ship have now arrived with their incubi, so they will be piling out in the next turn, and they will be doing what they do. And we're back, sorry, had a brief hiccup there with the technology. So continuing on, that Raider landed in the back corner. It has Drazar and the incubi, who have bad intentions towards poor Mr. Voldis and the Terminators over there, but that could go either way, actually. This Raider came down off the top of the hill, has a single wound left, still has its racks inside, so the intention here is to shoot as much as possible, then to charge and ram into the Terminators, and if we're lucky, the Terminators will be dead and we won't even have to charge. Over here in this corner, this Ravager pulled forward a little bit to get line of sight on the Purgation Squad, Paladin Squad. Just both of those targets would be nice to get rid of, to be gotten rid of. Archon moved up, so he's within 6 inches now. He can shoot his blast pistol at the Dread Knight. We also have this Ravager moving so that it is now conveniently in between the Archon and the Grandmaster Dread Knight. Kind of a sacrifice suicide move. However, dun dun dun, the Scourge, they have landed in this corner as well, and they have very nasty intentions towards this Dread Knight. So it could be an entirely moot point. That could very easily be destroyed thanks to the mortal wound output of Scourges when they are in the Dark Technomancer Coven. So we'll see. The end of this, we'll find out what's still standing. So we're going to go into the shooting phase now, and we will come back when that's done and let you know what's going on. All right, we're back after the shooting phase for the Drukhari. As predicted, the Scourge, with their Dark Technomancer overpowered weapons, completely obliterated the Dread Knight. Even with the True Silver armor, they put out 23 wounds, 20 of which were mortal wounds. And True Silver armor is great, but it's not that great. And this Ravager deleted all but one of the Purgation squad. That Raider finished off the last one, so the Drukhari took quite a nice swing of points there. The rest of the shooting was, so-so. We did take another wound off of one of these Terminators in the back corner, and then Mr. Wounded Raider, with 1 wound left, managed to kill a Terminator, and the other Raider that just dropped in back there killed another Terminator, so it dropped this squad down to just 1 left, and then the Raider charged him, so they're in combat. Of course, if the Terminator survives, which he most likely will, then we still hold that objective. And if he kills the Raider, then there's going to be a whole bunch of racks that pile out, in which case we'll lose the objective. So it's kind of a win-win for the Drukhari, not so much for the Grey Knights. And finally, this Raider did a fire and fade, so after shooting, it dropped back, so it's more behind the rock, a lot more distance for the Grey Knights to have to travel to get line of sight and or to tie it up in combat. But plenty of space for Mr. Drazar and his Incubi to disembark next turn and then make their way up and charge into that group. Yeah, it could be bad news for the Grey Knights after this turn. We'll have to see how the combat phase goes, and then we'll be back to update. It was a stunning turn of events here with the Paladins. The Grotesque did nothing. Homunculus did nothing. By the way, paid to heal himself up to 4 wounds. Then the Talos came in swinging at the Paladins. 6 wounds were scored. The Paladins rolled 6 1s and 2s to save them. Unbelievable. So the Paladins were dead with 2 extra wounds left over. Very disappointing over there. I was really hoping they would stay tied up a little longer. And then this combat, the Raider, not surprisingly, did no wounds to the Terminator. Terminator hit the Raider all 4 times with his angry +1 charge attack there, and then wounded 0 times, rolled 4 1s and 2s. So apparently the Grey Knights had just a whiffer in the psychic phase and combat phase this turn. So we will get the points totaled up at the end of this turn. Drukhari took a substantial lead with her Assassinate and Abhor the Witch points. They're sitting pretty right now. And then, yeah, that's going to leave the Grey Knights with some work to do. So we'll be back in just a bit. Grey Knight's movement phase is done. Voldus went backwards a little bit so he can hold that objective. Terminators and Apothecary went forward so they can get line of sight to shoot the Raider with Drazar in it. Paladin squad in the middle shuffled around so they have line of sight on the racks. They also have line of sight on the wounded Ravager back here in the corner. And they're within an easy charge range, quote unquote easy, because I haven't done one yet today, of the Talos in the middle. So we should be able to tie up some objectives. Drago ran up, got right next to this here Raider, and with some psychic shenanigans might be able to bust it and then still be free to move in to engage those racks in the back corner and possibly steal the objective. Interesting. Then you have the Strike Squad that got vected out last time. They have come down on this side of the board. Line of sight on the Scourge, which should be an easy set of models to pick up. Or maybe we pay for some Cybold ammunition and take out a Ravager. unsure at this moment in time. There's not a whole lot of command points left, so we'll have to be careful with what we do. But it is the Grey Knights really need to have a good turn here, or they're going to just get outscored and outmatched in just about every phase of the game from here on out, except for the psychic phase. So we'll come back after Grey Knight's shooting and psychic is done, and we'll see where we stand. Combat phase is about to begin. This Terminator, who only needed a 1 to get into combat, only rolled a 3, so he was just like, you know, I'm not worried about y'all. Goes sauntering in. You can see that there are only 2 racks that died from all of the Stormbolter fire from Voldus, this Terminator squad, and this Terminator himself. Pretty uneventful. The Psy Cannon over here did take 4 wounds off of the Raider, so that's that. They did not want to charge, just because it leaves Voldus way out there by himself. Maybe that's a mistake. We will find out when we come back. Maybe they will charge, maybe they won't. Thinking it's too late now. Paladin squad made their charge. They charged into the Talos. Only bad thing is that getting into range of the Talos meant they're in range of this here homunculus, so they will have to fight last once again. They did get Hammerhand off this time, so that'll be a little bit better for them. The Strike Squad tried to charge the Ravager, failed to charge. The Ravager tried to overwatch, failed to hit. So that was kind of a wash. Mr. Drago, over here on this side of the board, he made it dramatic. Failed his charge the first time, made us spend our last CP to reroll the charge. He made it in with about a half an inch to spare. Homunculus came in, heroically intervened, and you'll see that there are only 2 racks left in that squad, so they were kind of taking a punishment from the Paladins, who did not hurt the Ravager that they were going to shoot at, but did take some wounds off of the homunculus, the racks. Drago also successfully killed a Raider over here with his psychic shenanigans, cast Inner Fire, spent a CP to double his range of it, so he was able to cast Inner Fire without being in combat. Took 2 wounds from it, but was successful in killing that Raider. And that far Terminator behind the rock, he did a smite, which is what killed the Raider there and caused those racks to pile out. So that was a pretty good psychic phase. Shooting phase was not bad. Really hoped that we would at least get rid of the 1 more big boat. But as it was, we were able to collect a few more points on Bring It Down, killing those 2 Raiders. And we're in combat in the places that we want to be in combat, except for the Strike Squad. And they did... they did actually get a lot of hits on the Scourge over here. However, the Scourge paid a CP to reroll one of their failed saves, and then they passed it. And then they rolled 3 out of 4 6s for Power from Pain. So they only lost 1 more model. Kind of ridiculous and cool at the same time. So we'll see how the combat phase goes, and that should be a little bit more telling as far as how the rest of this game is going to end up playing out. We'll be back after the melee phase. Combat phase. Drukhari turn 3 is beginning. These guys stayed in combat. There were no winners or losers in that combat round. Kind of embarrassing once again for the Grey Knights. Over here, the Incubi and Drazar have jumped out of their Raider and are clearly in range for making some charges here. The Raider itself scooted around to this side and is now closer to either the Apothecary, which would be another 5 points for the, or 3 for Assassinate, another 5 for Abhor the Witch, or Voldus. Probably going to go after Voldus because that would clear the Grey Knights off of an objective as well. Over here in the middle of the table, Homunculus and Grotesque have gone over this way to engage the Strike Squad, feeling like not tangling with the Paladins for now. Over here, we stayed in combat with Drago. Drago only managed to kill the Homunculus. He did not get any wounds on these racks. And then we had this Ravager scooting out, kind of giving a little bit of a cushion. Actually, what we were thinking when we did this is that these guys would fall out of combat, which I forgot to move them out of combat, so I'm going to do that real quick. See, things that happen when you're trying to multitask. So they have fallen back out of combat. Now Drago is exposed to this Ravager who is lined up with clear line of sight. this Archon moved out a little bit so that there is kind of an open space, but he's 6 inches from this Ravager, 6 inches from that Ravager, so full rerolls, well, rerolls of 1. And this objective is still being held with a Ravager. The Scourge scooted back, and we're going to be putting a lot of firepower into this one little lonely strike squad and then tying them up with scary homunculus and grotesque. So we will get the shooting phase done, and then we will be back to see what happens in the melee. End of the shooting phase. This Raider was a dud. Did absolutely nothing except hurt himself because he overcharged his weapon. Rolled 2 1s to wound, spent a CP to reroll one of the 1s to wound. It still was a 1 to wound, so yeah, that was pretty bad. Voldus laughed in his face. Incubi have no guns, but they easily made all their charges, so these Terminators are basically dead. And then so is the Apothecary, and then probably so is Voldus. And then these guys stayed still. Over here, Mr. Homunculus with his Stinger pistol killed a strike squad. Then the Scourges and the Ravager there deleted the rest of them. That was bad for them. And over here, this Ravager took 4 of the wounds off of Drago that he had left, so he is now sitting there with a 1 wound. There are still 2 racks holding that objective, not Drago, because he does not get objective secured. So kind of interesting. These paladins are just chilling in the middle with nothing better to do right now, and we'll come back after this combat phase here and see if for some reason these Terminators are still alive. At the end of the combat phase, Terminators and Apothecary are now dead. Voldus is hanging out. He tried some sorcery that did some wounds on Drazar, but not enough. Drazar rolled 3 out of 4 6s to ignore wounds, so we only took 1 wound from inner fire off of Voldus. Same thing over here. There was a smite dealt and a smite ignored. Same over here. Oh, actually, he did take a wound. That was the only smite that was not ignored. Then back here, Drago did a smite, killed a rack, and then shot 1 in the shooting phase. So that was that. We did a lot of shots over here into this Raider and only managed to take off 2 wounds, so that was disappointing. Grey Knights are close to maxing out, bring it down as their secondary. Need to kill 1 more thing. And Voldus is, well, he might not be long for this world unless he can roll a really good amount of 4-up saves. I'm pretty sure his day is about numbered. So we're going to go into Drukhari, turn 4, and we'll come back after movement. Drukhari movement is done. We have had a little shuffle with this back Raider. He has gone around just to be able to draw line of sight on Drago. We can get rid of him. That would be awfully helpful with 1 wound left on him. That should be possible. The Homunculus and Grotesque did a U-turn, coming back to engage the Paladins. They figured that their odds are okay with 4-up invols to hopefully survive that. And that would keep the Paladins from doing a lot of return fire into wounded vehicles. Speaking of, these Scourge have moved up to take this objective, while the Ravagers and the Archon have shuffled around the corner, so they've got direct line of fire into the Paladin bomb, and actually they can shoot at Voldus as well. So they're probably going to take some shots at Voldus and the Paladins, and we're going to kill a whole bunch of birds in 1 turn. As you can see, the Drukhari shooting phase went well. This Raider still took another mortal wound supercharging, but he did get rid of Drago. Failed his save on a 2 and had no CP to reroll. Decided to let the Incubi and Drazar have their fun with Voldus, so we did not shoot at Voldus. But that meant that these 2 Ravagers back here quickly deleted the last Paladins in the middle of the board. In fact, it was quick, short, and brutal. So now we're into the combat phase. We'll have combat here with the Terminator and the 2 racks that are left, and then we'll come over here and, well, actually we'll start here because they charged. and then go over there to the Terminator. But yeah, I think this game might be over for the Grey Knights. Well, this was actually surprising. Terminator whiffed most of his hits again, did kill one rack, and then this guy powered up, got 2 wounds through, and Mr. Terminator failed his save. He only had 1 wound left, and that was the end of him. No CP to reroll. Drazar took most of Voldis's wounds on his attacks, had a few left, and then the Incubi, with just the sheer number of attacks, came in and popped Voldis very easily and very quickly. And that's it. There are no Grey Knights left. The Drukhari have tabled the Grey Knights. We will finish out the scoring for turn 5, because that is how the game works. And we'll come back at the very end with a final score and a little Drukhari celebration. That's it, folks. The Drukhari have repelled the Grey Knights. They remain standing on their home world here, this barren planet, desolate, rocky, sandy. The invaders are gone, and the Drukhari stand proud. The final score was 96 points for the Drukhari, 67 points to the Grey Knights. Quite a thrashing when you get right down to it. One of the best we've had with the Drukhari versus the Grey Knights. And one of the things that I have been learning more and more as I pilot the Drukhari forces is that when you spread them out, give them a lot of vehicles, a lot of firepower, and then move them around the board, you have to force your opponent to spread out. And oftentimes there's not any way to handle just the volume of fire, the board presence. You can really screen people out really well. And then that blob of Prophets of Flesh in the middle, usually when they get into the hot zones and the contested zones, they'll tie up the killy units from your opponent really well. And then you bring Drazar and the Incubi in on the backside somewhere, and it's bad news for your opponent. So worked out really well in this game. Really good victory for the Drukhari. A little disappointing for the Grey Knights. Have to go back and do some list tweaking and revising. But there you have it, 96 points to 67 points, Drukhari victory. Thank you for watching. This has been a Kitchen Table Wargaming production, shot and hosted right here on the kitchen table in the dining room. Have a great day. Hope you guys will come back and check us out again. We'll have more content coming your way soon.